everyone. Okay, today let's talk about hurricanes and the best kind of roof for hurricane force winds. And this will also benefit people who live in places that don't have hurricanes, but yet may have high windstorms. The most typical kind of roof in America is something called a gable roof. And it looks basically like this, where the roof comes to a point, and on the ends, the short side of the house, not the long, tends to be this A shape you will see, with a flat face on it. Now, sometimes you'll see the A with the long side, and that's still a gable roof, but typically it's on the short side of the house. Now, what happens is this. With hurricane force winds, or any wind actually, wants to push on that flat side, okay? And it can literally lift it right off of the house. And history shows this in some of our storms, the end result. And it's important we examine what failed, what stood up and held out through the storm, and what made systems fail. You know, that's very revealing, and that is something you would want to avoid in the future, of course. Now, gable roofs are very common and conventional, and sometimes people mistake what is common and conventional as being the best, assuming that's why it's used so frequently. But the truth is, often what sets the standard for what's conventional is how easy it is to build and affordable. Okay? Now, gable roofs are one of the more simple ones to build. They are not complex. They are also not as strong as some other styles. Now, something that is important on top of the shape of the roof is how the roof is attached. There used to be a system they called stapling, and that was as flimsy as it sounds. Those did not fare well at all. So what they've done, they've upgraded the code, and now we strap them down with metal straps. Okay, a better choice of a roof, and personally, I think it's more aesthetically beautiful, is something called a hip roof. Now, a hip roof also comes to a point like this, but on the ends, instead of being flat, it also comes to a point. So essentially, on a square building, it will look exactly like a pyramid. Now, you will also see them on rectangular buildings, and it still has that pyramid-like effect, but it doesn't tend to come to a perfect point. It'll have a line running across the top before it slopes down. So what will happen on one side, it will come to a point, but on the other side it comes up and then there's a line running. So what happens is this is a design that is much more aerodynamically friendly. So the wind, you know, isn't pushing on a straight flat wall. What happens with gable roofs that we were earlier talking about, I mean, they have come off sometimes in pieces. It often starts at the corner and just stuff starts getting peeled off from there. But they have taken flight where the whole roof has become a flying lethal projectile, just lifting off just like that, and maybe even falling over backwards, because, you know, then it's like got this hole under it, and, you know, for the wind to catch and lift. Another thing are the Eave Overhangs. Here's the situation with that. The longer the eave comes out to both shade the windows and protect from rain, you're providing a wing for wind to help lift that roof, even if you have, let's say, the hip roof we were talking about, shaped more like a pyramid. So there is this thing where you want to keep your eave overhangs as short as possible, but, you know, overhanging enough to do, you know, provide some shade and protection from the wind. There's something called a closed attic and an open attic. We typically have open ventilated attics, and what this is under the eave line you will see vents, and this is so hot air that rises can escape out. However, that can also provide a place for hurricane force winds to come up and start putting pressure on the roof and ripping it off. A sealed, closed attic does not have that. And what separates this, because an attic does need some degree of ventilation to let any hot air escape, but a closed, sealed attic puts the insulation on the ceiling side of the attic, so it becomes enveloped as a part of the interior space, whereas a ventilated attic tends to put the insulation on the floor of the attic. Okay, so there's a big difference there. So a sealed, closed attic with the insulation on the ceiling side touching the roof is better, actually, for both hurricanes and what I might say even like as an insulation for your home, because you're basically insulating everything. When you just insulate the floor of the attic, I mean, there's what's happening with what's above that, right? Okay, let's move on to other roof types, a flat rooftop. There is something called a parapet roof. Excuse me. My dog's enjoying chewing on this bone, and I don't know if it's like causing a racket in the video, but I'm going to give her her little wubba hippopotamus instead. Isn't that adorable? Here you go, sweetie. Knock yourself out. Oh, she bumps the camera. Okay, flat roofs. Okay. Flat roofs can fare very well in high winds because there's nothing sticking up, but they can still rip off. Because what can happen is when a hurricane starts, with the winds rather, it does tend to work on the ends and the corner and any loose thing, and it just starts ripping it off. So what is an ideal situation for a flat top roof is something called a parapet. A parapet roof looks flat from ground level, and it is flat for the most part, but if you were actually up on the rooftop, you would see there's a little wall there that helps protect you from falling over, and it also creates this visual barrier from ground, so you do not see any of the ventwork, pipes, stacking, that sort of thing. So architects love this because it creates a very clean, nice, tidy, straight line across the sky. A parapet wall also has benefits in protecting you from a storm. There are studies engineers have done showing that it takes the pressure off of the roof itself, so that wall literally protects that roof. So the taller that wall, the more protection you have. Also, this can be nice when you want, let's say, a rooftop balcony. And this wall also hides any stuff like chairs or whatever you might have up there, also allowing for some privacy. Let's see. Flat top roofs are not ideal if you live in a climate with snow. They can collapse. Snow is remarkably heavy, just like water. Water weighs over 8 pounds a gallon. Okay, so you can imagine how that adds up. This is why they have extreme A-frame, dramatic A-frames in snowy climates. One thing with the parapet wall is you do need adequate drainage, because if it was not draining, again, it will fill up like a swimming pool and your rooftop will collapse. okay, just like with snow. So, some other advantages to a parapet wall is this. Back in the day when homes were built very tight to each other, as well as commercial buildings, as they still can be, fire would spread rapidly to nearby structures. So the parapet wall actually helped contain a fire and prevent it from spreading. Another advantage of a parapet wall was that it was used as a high lookout point for intruders and invaders, and was a good fighting point, and the wall gave you a place to hide behind. You will even notice this on, like, let's say castles. They even have the little cutouts. They call that dental, that's kind of a dental design. But that way you could put your gun or your cannon or your bow and arrow or throw rocks and then hide behind the wall for safety. Okay, so that's a parapet wall, and that is when the outside external wall extends up past the roof line. It is important when you design a parapet wall that there is a slope for water to run off and not just sit level and pull up. Okay, that's very important. I forget the exacts, but it might be for every 1 foot of length it needs to drop an inch or so. Forgive me for not recalling the exacts, but that's in the ballpark. And with a deal like that, you might want to go a little overboard, okay? What some people have done when they have it at a more dramatic angle, but they want a rooftop balcony, they will build a deck on top of that, but it allows water to go through and then run on off. Another problem with parapets is when the water draining off uglies up the building dripping down. This is when you want some sort of water spout or some type of gutter system that takes it away from the facade of the building. Now, back in the day when gargoyles were more common, well, gargoyle basically was a water spout or a rain gutter to project water away from the structure to not erode the facade. Now, I have a hard-on for masonry, brickwork, stone, cement, and imagine back in the day when they would hire a mason to build a magnificent cathedral or something. He would spend a lifetime building this, and then if it wasn't completed, his son or someone else would pick up on the job. And with this kind of labor, you do not want the facade wearing off, and rain can be, well, can do its damage over time. And water also is one of the most powerful moving forces on the face of this earth. So let's get into some of the flood stuff, since we're also talking about rain, hurricanes. Homes have been pushed off their foundations with flash floods, surges coming in from rising sea levels, storms, that sort of thing. This is where putting your home on pilings, like stilts, some sort of beams, can benefit, because this allows the water to go under. I mean, I've lived in hurricane country, tornado alley, earthquakes, flash floods. They can all kill you. Flash floods can be unexpected, and they're very terrifying, and they have just swept whole homes right off of their foundation, and you think this is some big solid home anchored town. Not when that water comes barreling through. So to have it up on pilings, it allows the water to flow on by. And get out your fishing poles. So those are the basics on some of the better ways to build your roof to be hurricane-proof and withstand extremely high winds. And I do like the aesthetic design of both flat parapet roofs as well as the hip roof. The gable roof, not so much so, but it's the most common thing you see, and it's what my house currently has. Let's see, what else? My ideal building material is masonry. History shows these wood stick structures do not fare well in these storms, with the exception, down in the Keys they have beautiful, amazing, historical wood buildings still standing tall, even through all these hurricanes. The reason is they were built by sailors who built those homes in the same way they built those boats and ships, and that was to withstand high winds, seas, waves crashing into the side of it. So they were designed in a way that they would flex and give, okay? They do not build typical wood structures like that today. These were well-crafted homes and buildings by true craftsmen. And they use joining methods that also are not employed today. Today, no one uses tongue and groove or dovetail joints in building a house or dado joints and tenons. I mean, they're like stapling things, nailing, screwing. A screw can be better than a nail. So regardless of whether you want to get nailed or screwed. Okay, this is turning into a different thing. But yeah, the screws don't tend to back out like a nail can. And then there's a bolt system which can be good, but staples and stuff, forget about it. It's a joke when faced with some of these storms and how powerful they are. There is a home that stands out that survived Hurricane Katrina when all others around it totally were demolished. And it was raised on pilings so the water could flow under it, and it did have the hip roof I'm telling you about, where it comes to more like a pyramid. The square shape home fares better than the rectangle, again because it's more of a point like a pyramid, and there's no like long flat runs for the wind to push on as much. Even better than the pyramid shape, in my opinion, is a dome. It does not get any more aerodynamic than that. And on an ending note, I do want to comment on the Airstream Classic Nostalgic travel trailers. There was one that survived quite nice in Hurricane Andrew, which was very serious, down in Homestead, Florida, there in South Miami. And when you look at the photo, all the places around it are collapsed or gone, or a rubble of just wood and miscellaneous debris. And the Airstream was still there, standing tall, but it did get pushed off of the little cement pad it was sitting on. So it got pushed, but it held up. And those were designed after airplanes, and it was to be more economical in travel because they were pulled behind cars and people got better gas mileage, and it didn't stress the car out as much, you know, on all the drag from the wind. So what you will notice on the Airstream is they have curved corners. There are no sharp 90-degree angles or anything like that. And the top is rounded as well. And when you're inside, it's a very beautiful look, you know. And they did put those together with rivets. Not screws, not nails, not staples, not tape, okay? They were rivets, just like with airplanes. Okay, so thanks for tuning in. That is my video on the ideal roofs for hurricane force winds. And please write in with any comments, your own experience, especially if you have a background in construction and engineering or architecture. I would love to hear your ideas, your insight, any other creative solutions we could come up with other than the ones that I've already covered. As a building material, I am just totally in favor of Faro structures, which is a cement structure that can be encapsulated in a way where it's really like a shell, a hull, like a boat hull, right? But this can include the roof system as well. Like you could literally pick the whole house up and move it around. They're also lightweight, waterproof, termite friendly, fire, carpenter ants. To me, it is ideal. They are literally bomb shelters, and there are no attached walls or roof, being it's like a hull, so there's nothing to rip off. So on an ending note, that is the direction I'm leaning. And there's a lot of freedom in the design with that architecturally because the sky is the limit. And you can do curves and it's more sculptural. You don't have to stick to just straight, boring 90-degree angles, you know. It's much more organic and beautiful look in my opinion. So that is what I've decided to build for my home, and I will be shopping for property. I'm currently shopping for property, and I intend to build from the ground up, and I have the burning desire to do this, and in my lifetime it will happen. It's going to happen very soon. There's just something very satisfying and very primal even about building your own shelter that can protect you from the elements. And I think it's ridiculous. People here, when we have storms, they have to flee their homes and find protection elsewhere. What kind of fucking shelter is that? It's not a shelter. You have to flee your home in a storm or high winds or raising water levels. It's like, no. I'm not impressed with that. No. Your home should protect you. Okay? Alright, thank you for watching and goodbye.